2 minutes until showtime.
All right, we're a little early. It's we're going to start in 2 minutes. All right, we're a little early. I don't need to hear that again. Hey guys, thanks for joining us. People are starting to assemble slowly but surely. Hey, it's Karl Marx's birthday. You got to come and celebrate.
Minute until showtime. Show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Yaron Brook Show.
Blog Talk Radio.
Oh, wow, look at that. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Yaron Brook Show. Sorry for the false start. Thank you all for joining me. I am back in Puerto Rico after traveling last week. I apologize. I've been missing in combat, I guess. I thought while I was on the road I would do some shows, but it turned out to be more difficult, and the events I was at lasted long into the night, and days were filled with activity. So again, apologize for not having done a show for at least a week, maybe over a week. That's the longest I've gone in a long time. So yeah, well, it's good to be back. It's good to be back on the show. I'll be taking off again Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. No shows, but Friday we'll be back. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You can expect shows, and then I'm gone again. And when I travel, it's really hard to predict when I'm going to have an opportunity to do the show or not. I mean, I leave in the morning for Vegas. I just got back from Chicago. I leave in the morning for Vegas for a couple of days, and for one day, actually, one day in Vegas. Get into trouble in one day in Vegas. All right. I guess happy birthday, sad birthday, depressing birthday. Karl Marx was born. I'm sorry, again, I'm late. 2 days ago. So 2 days ago was the 200th birthday of the evil Karl Marx, the guy who basically invented communism, or took kind of the principles of egalitarianism, of communism that had existed in a variety of different sects and communities all over Europe, and solidified them, gave them kind of a philosophical shine, gave them economic credibility, and put them out there into the world. And the consequences that I guess we're celebrating with this birthday. I mean, the European Union, the head of the European Union was celebrating this. People all over the United States were celebrating this. There were articles in all the newspapers celebrating this. And what are the consequences of him, putting forth this philosophy, this set of ideas, this economic justification for a system based on each according to his need, from each according to his ability? What are the consequences? Well, the consequences are overwhelmingly death and destruction everywhere where Karl Marx is taken seriously, everywhere where Karl Marx, the attempt is made to implement Karl Marx ideas, in reality, the only consequence, the only thing that happens is death, destruction, poverty, starvation. Karl Marx is responsible for more deaths than I can think of anybody, any thinker who is directly responsible for more deaths than Karl Marx. His acolytes, his fans, his believers, his supporters, took over the Soviet Union, took over Russia. The Soviet Union killed somewhere close to 100 million people. Maybe less, maybe more. People want to quibble. Really? I think we get the principle once you reach 10 million. You're responsible for 10 million deaths. It's not really that important if it's also 90 or 100 million. I mean, it's just more scary, the bigger number. But yeah, it's pretty bad. And then in addition to that, you've got China, 60 million or 40 to 60 million deaths in China. So I think easily 100 million to plus Cambodia, Vietnam, North Korea, all the people who are dying of starvation in North Korea, the people who be murdered directly by the regime and indirectly through communal farming, the people who are dying in Venezuela right now. I mean, Karl Marx has the bloodiest trail behind him or in front of him, however you want to call it, a consequence of his ideas that I think, a direct consequence, right, than any thinker in human history. And yet, New York Times ran a story claiming Karl was right. I was reading the story in what's it? Quartz magazine, kind of a highfalutin intellectual magazine, right? Quartz by Olivia Goldhill. She looks like a nice lady. There's a picture here. Oh my God, this article is so stupid. Yeah, there's a big campaign now to resurrect Marx. Look, Marx was right. Marx was right. And all the people who've claimed to be Marxist, all the people who've killed people in Marx's name, all the people who've starved people in the name of communism. I mean, all those people were just wrong. They didn't get Marx. You have to admit, sometimes you have to break an egg to make an omelet, but they overdid it. And it's not real Marx. Marx would have never tolerated authoritarianism, never tolerated totalitarianism. I mean, who are these people? What do they read? Have they read Marx? Where do they get this complete and utter garbage and nonsense? I mean, Marx and Engels, his sidekick and financier, I mean, were genocidal. They intended when they got to power to wipe out whole races that couldn't be made consistent with the proletarian. You should read the letters between Marx and Engels and them dissecting which races are appropriate, which ethnic groups are appropriate for communism, which are not, and which will have to be eradicated if we to achieve this beautiful, glorious outcome of communism. And it's exactly what happened. Not that they were eradicated because they belonged to a particular ethnic group, but they were eradicated because they were alive, because they didn't fit into the rhetoric. They didn't fit the philosophy. They didn't fit. So, no, Marx is wrong. Yes, he makes some observations about capitalism that turn out to be right. He was not original in this. His observations about capitalism are not original. His conclusions about it, somewhat original. His solution to it, somewhat original. But his actual observation on what will happen under capitalism were not original. And the stuff that is original is wrong. The guy was an evil bastard. I mean, intellectual evil bastard, a smart evil bastard, but an evil bastard nonetheless, who evaded what he really knew to be the truth, which is that capitalism promoted massive prosperity among the working class, that capitalism was the only system to bring people out of poverty and to create a middle class. He knew this because he wrote it. It's in Das Kapital. He describes beautifully the progress achieved under capitalism, the success that is capitalism, the wonders that industrialization and the industrial revolution, capitalism, have brought to England. And he evaded all that. He evaded the consequence of all that because he hated it. He envied it. He was a poor intellectual depending on these capitalism to live. He hated that. And I think motivated by envy, envy, hatred, he basically came up with a system to undermine and undercut capitalism. So let's go some of his predictions, because I was fascinated by this article in Quartz because of the stuff they write. So I'm going to read you some of the things that they are writing defending Karl Marx, and I'm going to comment as we go along. Right? If I had a video, I'd show you a video, but I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it like this, right? And by the way, Richard just reminded me, if you want to ask a question, then you have to use the super chat. So you have to contribute some money. Otherwise, I can't follow all the questions. But if you use the super chat, it highlights them and it pops out and I can see them. That's on YouTube, on Facebook. Facebook we need to talk to Facebook people to create a super chat Facebook feature so we can make some money off of Facebook. But if you want to ask a question, if you want me to make sure to answer it, super chat is the way to go. So thank you, Richard. Richard is not even asking a question, but he's using super chat in appreciation. So thank you for that. Those of you who are on Facebook, you can always go to Patreon and make a contribution there. Patreon.com/Yaron Brook Show. Patreon.com/Yaron Brook Show. And again, we made our April goal. We blew away our April goal. We made it early, and we went over 400. And now we have to go for 500. 500 patrons as quickly as possible. I mean, it would be great if we could do it in May. That would be huge. That would be unprecedented given the pace, but that would be great. So I'm counting on you guys. Those of you who have not yet contributed through Patreon, please do so. I really would appreciate it. It both helps us create these podcasts, but I think I'm going to be relying more and more on Patreon, even to travel around the country and around the world, to give my talks, travel around the country and the world to bring these ideas to young people. So I would really appreciate the support to make all of that happen. Those of you who give, if you could give more. Those of you who don't yet contribute, it would be fantastic if you can contribute more to the show. I would very much appreciate it. All right, let's go over this article about Karl Marx. He writes, the author writes, this is pretty good, right? This is Karl Marx writing. Once adopted into the production process of capital, the means of labor passes through different metamorphoses, whose culmination is the machine, or rather an automatic system of machinery. Wow, he's predicting robots. The workers themselves are cast merely as its conscious linkage. Wow, there's so many problems here, right? Again, if you think about a Marxist kind of world where everything is labor, where did these machines come from? How do machines get invented? How does an automatic system of machinery come into being? Marx never really explains those things because he can't, because he believes that all value is created by muscle. All value is created by labor. The machines just somehow show up. They just somehow are created. It reminds me that, many people have adopted this. I mean, Adam Smith believed in the labor theory of value, that at the end of the day, it's muscle that creates value out there in the workforce, that muscle is the real producer. Labor, physical force, is the real producer of values. And then a lot of kind of, I'd say, libertarian free market economists, the way they describe the way markets work, the one thing they always omit is the human mind. It's innovation. It's creativity. It's the entrepreneur. It's what the entrepreneur does. So even Hayek, even plenty of other thinkers. I was just I was over the weekend. I was in Chicago, and at something called the Liberty Forum, Liberty Fund Conference. Liberty Fund conferences are basically these small conferences. You bring together about 15 intellectuals and some business people, and you put them around the table, and you give them a bunch of readings in advance, and you talk about the readings. It's heaven for intellectuals. It was a blast. I've spent a weekend there this last weekend at one of these in Chicago, and the reading was a book and a book about the idea that economics could learn a lot from evolution, and that economics, you can explain economic phenomena, you can explain the marketplace if you understand evolution. You apply evolution to the marketplace. And again, what you get is the disappearance of the entrepreneur, the disappearance of the human mind. Things just kind of evolve. They kind of happen. Why do they happen? Who drives them? Like he describes how a shirt is made, and the different shirts get brought into the market, and different people kind of make decisions, but the decision-making process is never really described in depth. But they, these shirts are not those shirts, and then they go into the market, and then the marketplace kind of decides these shirts are good and those shirts are bad. So more of the good shirts get produced, and less of the unpopular shirts get produced, and it all happens automatically. There's no planning. There's no human mind. There's no reason. There's no intelligence. There's no Steve Jobs. There's no entrepreneur. And to some extent, in Hayek's idea of spontaneous order, there is this, what's missing is things just happen. The order just comes about, and you just let it ride. And it's almost like we are intrinsically, instinctually going to do the right thing in some way within a marketplace, because that's kind of the evolution of it. That's how genes are telling us. The evolution just happens. And again, market's a mysterious thing. Think of Adam Smith, the invisible hand, right? We don't want to explain how this happens because it happens through the self-interest of entrepreneurs. And we don't exactly understand how the entrepreneur does what he does and how they use human reason to create what they create. So we throw it out of our hands and say it's an invisible hand, or it's spontaneous order, which is Hayek's term. I don't know how many of you have read a wonderful little essay. It's really wonderful, called I, Pencil. It was written by Leonard Read, the founder of FEE, who was friendly with Ayn Rand during a certain period. They had a falling out for a while. They were very friendly, and Ayn Rand actually wrote for his magazine in the early days, and then they had a falling out. And I, Pencil is a great illustration of this. If you're not interested in reading I, Pencil, and you can watch a bunch of videos of I, Pencil on YouTube. Just look the letter I, Pencil on YouTube, and you'll find these videos, and they do a good description of what's in the essay. And basically the essay says, look, nobody knows how to make a pencil. Literally nobody on planet Earth knows how to make a pencil. Nobody knows how to chop down the wood and make the graphite and, use machines to put the wood into this tiny little frame and thread the graphite into it. So in other words, and where does graphite come from? It needs to be mined. The people who create the graphite for the pencil aren't the people who mine it. They don't know anything about mining. And the whole idea is this division of labor in a market economy gets all these resources together in this beautiful, spontaneous, invisible hand, magnificent way. And what you get is a pencil. But what's missing? What's missing is the entrepreneur who has the idea of a pencil. What's missing is the inventor who invents a pencil, who discovers that you can put all these things together. So yes, that inventor, the beauty of the market, and it's truly beautiful, is that the inventor doesn't have to know how to do all the things required to make the pencil. Yeah, people asking what's a pencil, right? Because they're like born in the last 30 years and they don't know what a pencil is. But Look it up. I'm sure there's a good article on Wikipedia on what a pencil is. So this pencil requires an entrepreneur. It requires an inventor. It requires a capitalist. It requires people to plan. It doesn't actually happen spontaneously through evolution. And in Marx, labor passes through different metamorphoses whose culmination is the machine. Really? Labor creates the machine? It metamorphosizes like people change into machines? How does this happen? So what all of these thinkers are ignoring, and it's tragic, really tragic, because the best economists, and even when they talk about entrepreneurs, they don't quite get it. They don't quite get the role. They don't quite get the significance. They don't quite get the importance, the intensity, the reason and the dedication an entrepreneur has to reason in order to create what they create. I mean, the only thinker who got it is Ayn Rand. Really, the only thinker who got it fully, completely. And you see that in Howard Roark in The Fountainhead. It's 75 years to the publication of The Fountainhead. I think today, maybe close to Marx's birthday. How about that? And in Atlas Shrugged, of course, in the character Reardon, you really get what it takes to be an inventor and an entrepreneur and a business owner. And, you really get the kind of mental and physical and emotional effort that it takes to be successful at these things. But economists of all stripes, including the free market economists, just take it as something that just happens. We get automated system of machinery. How? Where does it come from? Blank out. No comment. We don't know. So yeah, he predicted robots. Everybody predicted robots. It wasn't that hard in the middle of the 19th century to project forward and to see that automation was going to dominate. But people say, wow, look, Karl Marx predicted robots. All right, let's keep reading here because it's just unbelievable. Yeah, basically, the author is saying his analysis, Marx, and Forsyth's have repeatedly proven true. True, she says. She doesn't mention deadly, destructive, enslaving. No. Karl Marx's analysis and Forsyth's have repeatedly proven true. Why? Because he predicted robots? This one's funny just because of the source, right? So here she is. She's writing an article about Karl Marx. And who gives her the source? So I'm just reading from the article. Marx showed that recurrent crises were not an accidental side effect of capitalism, but a necessary and inherent feature. Explains. Now notice who is explaining this. Who's teaching us about Karl Marx? Explains Nick Nesbitt from Princeton University. So, wow, Princeton, smart guy, important guy. Must be a philosopher, maybe an economist. I mean, Karl Marx was ultimately a philosopher and primarily a philosopher, somewhat of an economist, right? You'd say that. No. He's a Princeton University professor of French and Italian. Oh, wow. There's an authority for you. I mean, Karl Marx didn't even write in French and Italian. What the hell does Nick Nesbitt have to contribute to discussion on Marx? Why? He's got a PhD and he teaches at Princeton, but his PhD's in French and Italian. Now, look, I know my PhD's in finance, so what do I know, right? It just makes me laugh. The first guy she quotes in the article about Marx is somebody French and Italian, and throughout the article is not a single economist because the economists would shudder. Even the worst economists are not likely to defend Karl Marx. So crises are not an accidental side effect of capitalism, a necessary and inherent feature. But the fact is that crises, if you look at the big ones, always a feature of government. They're always a feature of government intervention in an attempt to fix capitalism. Crises are a consequence of central planners thinking they know better than the markets. They're not features of capitalism. They're features of statism. And in particular, they are features of a statist attempt to fix, in quote, capitalism. That's true going back to the 19th century and the problems in the 19th century when they didn't trust private money and they kept trying to manipulate the money. And it goes to the founding of the Fed and the Fed creating the Great Depression. It goes to the 2008 financial crisis. They're not crises of capitalism. Now, it's true. Capitalism does create what Schumpeter described as creative destruction, which means, it's not a great term, creative destruction. What it means is that new things replace old things, that old industry dies because new industries are created. But that doesn't create, it certainly doesn't necessitate crises. It necessitates a reallocation of capital. It necessitates a reallocation of labor. Some people lose their jobs. Other jobs are created. People move from old jobs to new jobs. Capital flows to new technologies and exits old technologies, and it works beautifully. And yes, you might go into a mild recession in the process. What turns that mild recession into a major crisis is government. Right? Then she goes on to say, he also shows, this is this French and Italian professor, that capitalism nonetheless tends to eliminate living labor, right? So I guess this is Marx. Marx shows, right, that capitalism tends to eliminate living labor as a necessary dimension of its development. And that means capitalism is never stable, forever shifting in and out of crisis. The system depends on human labor while simultaneously eradicating it. And this is a theme, right? It's a theme in this article. That the thing about capitalism is it destroys jobs. It destroys labor. It eradicates it. Yeah, I mean, that's true, actually. Now that I think of it, I was thinking, no, this doesn't make any sense. It's not true. But then I realized that what he's really talking about is communism. Communism eradicates labor by shooting them, by killing them. Mass graves. That's communism's solution to the eradication of labor. No, capitalism doesn't eradicate labor. There are more jobs today. I don't know why I have to say this. I don't know, but I have to say it because nobody knows this. I assume some of you know it, but most people just don't know this. There are more jobs today, in spite of the fact that we have only some capitalism. If we had more capitalism, if we actually had capitalism in the world, there'd be many, many more jobs. But there are more jobs today, in spite of all the regulations and controls and limitations on capitalism, than ever in human history, by a long shot. In spite of the computers, AI, robots, mechanization, and everything else, there are more jobs today. I don't know. There's somewhere around 2 billion jobs on the planet. Certainly somewhere between 1 billion to 2 billion jobs on the planet. Jobs, I mean people working for other people, people working for businesses, people not in subsistence farming or small craft shops, in the cities, but people actually working at a job in a division of labor society under semi-partial, it really isn't such a thing, but a little bit of capitalism, some freedom. When Karl Marx was alive, the population of the planet was about 500 million people. Not that many people, very few people working at jobs. A lot of people still working on farms. I think by the end of the 19th century, it was still over 10% of people working on farms. At the beginning, it was 85%. And now it's well less than 1%, at least in the United States. But I think the shrinkage is global. is everywhere, right? So, no, capitalism doesn't destroy jobs. Capitalism is the greatest job creator in human history. Nothing's even come close to capitalism creating jobs. It created billions of jobs and could create billions more if we allowed for it. Capitalism is truly magnificent, right? Truly magnificent system for creating work. So I got one question, and let's see, who is it from? Kyle asks a super chat question, a relevant one. Marxist philosophical libertarians are deniers of the mind fundamentally, hence why anarchist Marxist libertarians can coexist politically. I think that's right. I mean, a lot of the libertarian movement denies the mind. A lot of the libertarian movement is materialist. A lot of the libertarian movement and their rejection of intellectual property as part of this is Marxist in some deep sense. And many of them will admit it. I find it funny. I don't know if you guys know who Varoufakis is. Varoufakis actually quoted in this article. Let's see if I can find his quote. Varoufakis is the economics, is an economist, he calls himself, and former Greek minister of finance. And he really recently wrote a compelling new introduction to the Communist Manifesto, right? Detailing why Marx is so essential if we want to reckon with the growing gap between rich and poor. Now, what's interesting about Varoufakis is he told me he was basically a libertarian Marxist. He was a libertarian Marxist. So yeah, they exist. Now he's a real Marxist. I mean, I don't know, growing gap between rich and poor? What growing gap between rich and poor? I don't know what he's talking about. If you look at inequality globally, the gap between rich and poor is shrinking because the poor are getting so rich so fast. The number of people in extreme poverty is shrinking so fast. The number of people globally entering the middle class is growing so fast that global inequality is actually shrinking. So I don't know what he's talking about. I don't know what all these people are talking about when they talk about, All right, here's another beauty of a quote. I don't have time to go over all these quotes, but it's just, they're quoting, they're saying, Marx famously popularized the slogan, from each according to his ability to each according to his needs. Meaning that all would have the opportunity to reach their highest potential and to receive the needed goods, such as food and shelter in return. Wow. What an interpretation. Right? What about the people who have ability and whose stuff is taken from them in order to give to the people in need? Are they reaching their highest potential? No. I mean, I'm okay. I'm not okay, but I would support it. But I'm okay if you said logically that, meaning that those in need have the opportunity to reach their, I don't think highest, their potential. How you can reach your highest potential or any potential on the money that other people give you, is dubious. But the fact is, by definition, from each according to his ability to each according to his need, means that the people who have ability cannot reach their full and highest potential. They get stuck because their resources are taken from them and given to others in order so others have more opportunities, but their opportunities shrink. Their opportunities are taken away. Taken away. I mean, the system of Marxism is so evil because of exactly that. That popularized slogan, as they call it, is the essence of Marxism. It's the essence of communism, of his solution to the so-called problem of capitalism. And it is so evil. This is what Ayn Rand is writing against in everything she writes. The idea that we should penalize the able We should penalize the productive. We should penalize those who create value, who make stuff, who produce stuff, who do stuff in the name of other people's needs. And I'll talk about the welfare state in a minute because the welfare state is a reflection of exactly that slogan. The welfare state is fundamentally Marxist in that sense, in the sense of this slogan. Because the welfare state is built exactly on this assumption, from each according to his ability to each according to his needs. And I would argue that morally, that is offensive to the people with ability, and it's offensive to the people with needs. It is morally evil and bad for both groups. All right. This piece is such a, here, he was correct that the gap between labor and capital would get worse. Really? We don't know that because we've never played out capitalism. But why is the gap important? And by the way, he predicted, which didn't become a reality, that not only the gap between labor and capital would get worse forever, but that the result of that would that the capitalist would have all the capital and that the labor would have nothing. Nothing is further from the truth of that. He was 100% wrong on that. But even the gap, as capital accumulates, the return on capital goes down. So the whole assumption here, and Piketty's Das Kapital for the 21st Century, which was the name of his book in German, I guess, is the same idea. It's the idea that the more capital accumulated, the higher the returns on capital are always higher than the returns on everything else. And therefore, those with capital have continuously gained more and more and more capital. Ultimately, they accumulate all the capital in the world, which is bizarre and shows a deep, deep, deep misunderstanding of economics in so many levels. The dynamism of the entrepreneurial process, the fact that you have capital doesn't guarantee that the capital will grow in the future, and the fact that there are diminishing returns to capital. None of that, all of that economics is out. Yet Karl Marx was insightful and foretold the future. What a bunch of garbage. He was an evil, envious little creep. He also predicted globalization. Globalization was happening all around him in the late 19th century. In the middle of the 19th century, everybody predicted globalization. And rising inequality of today. He predicted today's rising inequality, which is bizarre because we don't have capitalism today. Some argue that the rising inequality, if it even exists, and if we should even care about it, which we shouldn't, is a consequence of the mixed economy. Yeah. And this is the prediction. And this is beautiful, right? This is so true. Think about this. Karl Marx predicted that capitalism would lead to, quoting Karl Marx, poverty in the midst of plenty. Poverty in the midst of plenty. Where is this poverty in the midst of plenty? Where is it? And why does it exist? Maybe it's people's choices. No. It has to be capitalism. It's the inevitable outcome of capitalism. But first, nobody in America is poor by the standards of poverty of 1850. Say that again. Nobody in America is poor. Zero poverty rate. By the standards of poverty of England, where Marx lived in the 1850s, or Germany. Either way. There are no poor people in America or in Western Europe. Probably this is even true of most of Eastern Europe. By the standards of poverty of Marx's time. So there is no poverty in them. There's people who are poorer. There's relative poverty. And in 300 years, when we're flying around in little spacecrafts and, transporting all over the universe, there will be people who are relatively poor to everybody else. But will they be poor? No, don't give me this crap. I've traveled the world. I've seen poverty. I've traveled all over the United States. I know what poor people in the United States live through. I was poor in the United States a long time ago. That's not real poverty. That's not $2 a day poverty, which was what poverty was very prevalent during Karl Marx's era. It's not $2 a day, which is what poverty is in parts of Africa and parts of Asia. By the way, that kind of poverty is disappearing from the entire planet today. So 30 years ago, the rate of poverty of people living at $2 a day or less was 30%. Today, it's under 9%. Under 9%. I mean, that's still too high because freedom would raise all those people up from poverty. But under 9%. And people are saying, Karl Marx was right because we live with poverty in the midst of plenty. Go to poor countries, people. Harvard Business Review points out that Marx was right because contemporary society is characterized by a sense of alienation among workers because they voted for Donald Trump, distance from the output of their labor, and the fetishization of commodities. I don't even know what that means, but let me say that yes, workers are alienated. They alienated because, for a lot of reasons, and I've done whole shows about this, but they're not alienated because of this crap. They're alienated because they're told that manual labor is beneath, primarily by the left, by the way, that manual labor is beneath contempt, that everybody should go to college and get a job that is non-manual. They are alienated because they've been promised by both sides an ever-rising standard of living without them having to take any personal responsibility over their own lives. They've been promised that every job that they've ever had will come back and be in Southern Ohio. You never have to leave Southern Ohio. We will provide you jobs in Southern Ohio. And when that didn't happen, they were told, oh, it's capitalism's fault, and oh, it's globalization's fault, and oh, it's the Chinese fault. They weren't told to get in a frigging car and drive to Northeast Arkansas and find a job where the jobs are. No, that would be personal responsibility. That would be taking your life seriously. That would be being responsible for your own life and your own livelihood. Much easier to teach them to sit around and wait. And then we're surprised that they alienated. It's not labor that alienates them. It's not capitalism that alienates them. It's statism. It's the welfare state that alienates them. It's the empty promises of intellectuals and politicians that alienate them. They're not alienated under capitalism. I don't think labor is quite as alienated in Hong Kong and Singapore as it is here. Oh, and then they predict, because Marx was right, that revolutions described by Marx could one day transpire, though not soon. Why not soon? Because we're not ready. We're not good enough. This is in the 21st century, after experiencing the horrors of communism during the 20th century. The problem is that we're not good enough for communism. Why? Because among many necessary factors, this woman writes, working class people in the most economically developed nations would need to develop greater political independence from the capitalist classes in those countries. I mean, the problem is in the world, didn't you know, is the working class people are being brainwashed by capitalism and by the capitalist classes to think that their life is pretty good. This is just after they told us they're alienated. And that they're not committed enough to socialism. They're not committed enough to capitalism, to communism. That's their problem. They're not committed enough to their own so-called well-being. And then she says, but even that's not enough. We would also need to see the emergence of more principled anti-imperialist politics that opposes war and racism. Marx was a warmongering racist. The idea that Marx was from peace is bizarre. The idea that Marx was anti-racist is bizarre. He was a collectivist and an explicit racist and an anti-Semite, even though, of course, he was a Jew. Just, if you don't believe me about the anti-Semitism, read Marx's essay on the Jewish question. You can find it for free at marx.org, which you should go to periodically. You got to study the enemy. And she says we need to promote solidarity among working peoples of all nations. The problem is nationalism. The working class in America doesn't like the working class in, I don't know, Uzbekistan. If only they were transnational, the working class sympathies, then we would be good. Thoroughly understanding capitalism, informed by Marxist piercing analysis, allows us to envisage potential alternatives to the evils of capitalism. She says, right? Anyway. In the last paragraph, she writes, every major historical advance in technology has destroyed human jobs, with some leaving many unemployed for long periods at a time. Nothing about that by definition, more jobs were created than lost because more people are employed today than ever before. No recognition of that. No recognition that capitalism has raised the standard of living of everybody who's experienced it, everybody who participated in it dramatically. No discussion of the state of poverty in the world today. No discussion of the amount of wealth that we possess. No discussion of the expanded life expectancy that we have today as a consequence of the most capitalist era in human history, the 19th century, and all the advances since. Nothing. Karl Marx is a hero. And I know, because I did a previous podcast about Karl Marx and being evil and being one of the most evil people in history, that people objected. You can't, he was just a guy with ideas. I mean, other people implemented them. They're the evil ones. No. If you advocate for evil ideas, particularly evil ideas whose evil is not that hard to figure out, if you advocate for from each according to his ability to each according to her needs, that is evil. There is no way to practice that ideology without spilling blood, without breaking eggs, without destroying the man of ability, and therefore destroying millions of lives. There is no way to practice it any other way. And Karl Marx was no idiot. He knew it. He didn't care. And if he'd lived to see Lenin, he would have egged him on to kill more people. The only thing Marx would have been upset about is that communism came about in Russia, which he didn't think was possible, instead of the England. Because he believed that communism was an evolution, from capitalism. So first you had to have capitalism before you had communism. And that Russia, who never had capitalism, couldn't embrace communism, according to Marx. He even got that wrong, and they don't care. All right, I wanted to say something about, in the context of Karl Marx and in the context of the evil, and I've said it a little bit of this already, in the context of the evil of, to each, from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs, about the evil of the welfare state, because the welfare state really is that slogan, the Marxist slogan, manifest. Now, it's not manifest in full because people saw what happened when it was manifest in full and stepped back from the abyss, if you will. But they did not give up on the ideal. And you're seeing that in the articles in the New York Times. You're seeing that in the European Union. You're seeing that in this article that I just read from. You're seeing it all over the media celebrating Karl Marx's 200th birthday. And and of course, we're living it. We're living the welfare state. Now, somebody wrote here, I have to comment on this because this is so stupid. Ayn Rand died on welfare. Let's see, bullshit. I think bullshit is the right appropriate word for that. I mean, Ayn Rand died relatively rich. Ayn Rand died with huge amounts of money in the bank. Ayn Rand was a best-selling author even when she was on deathbed. Ayn Rand had plenty of money. She never received welfare. Of course, it's always these people who claim that Social Security and Medicare, not Medicaid, Medicare are not welfare. they're not, or they can't. She got some of her money back from Social Security. It's not a rumor. There is no rumor that she died on welfare. This is truly fake news. It's somebody made it up, right? It's not a rumor. It's fake news that's become, I guess, that people are spreading through rumor. Really. Again, didn't die impoverished, died rich. And the difference between me and the people making the fake news is I can actually pull out her bank statements and show you guys how much money she had in the bank, because I have the archives. So you can lie and you can make stuff up all you want. But anyway, all I'm doing, I know this guy's trolling, but this is such a common fallacy, and the people listening to this podcast who probably believe in that fallacy, that's worthwhile dispelling right then and there. Thank you, troll, for allowing me to dispel the stupidity of that fake news that is out there. What is the welfare state? What is the principle behind the welfare state? The principle is that there's some people in need, and that their need is a moral claim, All right, I have to say it. He said, just Google it. That's pretty funny. Google is reality. Fake news and Google is reality, right? Anyway, it's based on the moral principle that somebody's need is a claim against you. It's a claim against you that the state can impose on you by force. That's the essence of the welfare state. Somebody's need is both a moral and a legal claim against your wealth, against what you created, against your funds. That's the essential characteristic of the welfare state. It, basically says need is the standard of morality. Need is what matters. Need is to be rewarded. Ability must be penalized. Ability, if you have it, means you are immediately enslaved. Ability means that you must give up values, that you must be knocked down, that you cannot reach your full potential, that you cannot flourish to the fullest. And in doing both of those things, the welfare state, solidifies, established this an immoral, fundamentally evil system. And it's evil on both sides, if you will. It's evil, and I think most of the listeners here will understand the obvious evil, the evil of taking from those who are able, from taking to those who have, from taking from those who have the ability and have created wealth and have saved and invested and made something of their lives, putting a cap on their lives, restricting them, handcuffing them, enslaving them, taking from them by force, using physical force to take from them, which is what welfare is. That is a crime. We know it's a crime for somebody to rob somebody else, to come at him with a gun. An individual, we call that thievery, and we put the guy in jail. Ayn Rand made the statement that it's impossible for something that is immoral to an individual to be immoral for a gang, to be immoral for a group, to be immoral for a collective. If it's immoral for an individual, it is immoral for the gang, for the group, no matter whether they vote for it or not. Stealing is stealing is stealing. Taking people's money away is theft, but it's worse than that. It's worse than that. It's worse than just the fact that a gun comes out and takes your money. In that sense, highway robbery is 1,000 times better. Because it does much more. It doesn't just take your money. It tells you it's your moral duty to give up that money. It tells you implicitly that you don't deserve the wealth that you have. When a crook takes your money, he's a crook. He's a thief. He's trying to survive by living off of you. And everybody recognizes that as evil. But the welfare state is viewed as morally good. What does that mean? That means you who have the wealth, you who have made something of your life, you are the bad guy because you're not giving up voluntarily. The rich are not paying enough. The rich are being demonized. Every time we talk about lowering taxes for the rich, oh my God. So the welfare state basically makes the rich out, makes the wealthy out. I mean, the productive rich, the people who've made it, created it, built it. They're evil because they are wealthy. They're evil because they've made it. And they owe the needy. And all the state is doing is fulfilling what they morally owe them anyway. It's just the facilitator of their charity. And then the libertarians or conservatives come around and say, oh, the welfare state's bad because if we did away with it, these people could do charity and that's more virtuous. So basically, these libertarians, these bleeding heart libertarians, and these conservatives are basically saying, yeah, we agree with you. They don't deserve the wealth. They have a moral responsibility to give it away. It's not really their money. But we want them to do it voluntarily. We want to guilt them into it. I mean, in some ways, that's more despicable. No, if you create it, it's yours. You owe nobody. I mean, assuming you've paid your bills, you don't owe anybody anything. You don't have a moral duty to give it away. Who knows what the levels of charity would be in a free society? How much charity do you need in a free society? Probably not very much. The welfare state institutionalizes the idea that the creative, the productive, the able, the wealthy, through wealth creation of their own, are tainted, are bad, and need to be knocked down. Need to be knocked down. And they legitimize that morally. And they do exactly what this woman who claims that, Marxism is going to let everybody fulfill their highest potential. No, some people are not worthy of fulfilling their highest potential. Why? Because they've been successful. So we need to restrict their potential. We need to crush their potential. We need to limit their potential. So the welfare state is an application, in a sense, of Marxist principles. And it's evil through and through in the way that it treats the wealthy, in the way that it treats the creative, the productive. Both because it uses force against them, but in some way even worse, because of it creates this moral stigma, if you will, this moral attitude towards them and in themselves. I mean, that's the real tragedy, is that they all adopt this view of themselves. I don't know that Bill Gates feels guilty, but I do know he thinks he should feel guilty. I do know that he thinks he should atone for his sins. What sins? Guy changed the world. He made his own life and all of our lives dramatically better off. The idea that a genius like Bill Gates is condemned for his virtues are described as sins. That's what makes the welfare state so goddamn evil. And then on top of that, I don't think as important, but still important, is what it does to the poor. Particularly to the poor I care about, who are the ambitious poor. The poor who want to rise up, who want to do better, who want to be successful, who if left alone would be entrepreneurs and would achieve something with their lives. And the welfare state comes along and says, don't do that. We don't want you to get too ambitious. If you are not needy anymore, you're less virtuous. So stay there. Here's a check. Don't worry. Be happy. We'll give you free healthcare. We'll give you free education. We'll give you free money. Just stay poor. Please stay poor. I mean, the evil of that. All in the name of virtue. All in the name of we're helping you. No, you're not. No, you're not. I don't need your help. I don't need your freaking check. Just leave me alone. Let me build. Let me create something. Let me earn the pride. Let me earn the self-esteem of going to work. No. We're going to establish a minimum wage so that you don't have to work at that inhumane $7 an hour. We're going to make it $15 an hour. Okay, so I'll never have a job. Ever. Oh, don't worry if you don't have a job. We'll give you a check. Food stamps, universal basic income. We'll come up with something. Don't worry. We've got you taken care of. Think about what that does to the mentality of people in that culture. Think of what that does to a young inner city kid who can't get a job because he can't produce at $15 an hour. Think of what that does. The kind of incentives it creates. And you know, one thing about the single mother who's having kids because she gets checks from the government. She's immoral and stupid and unproductive, and who cares about her? But think about her kids. I mean, think about the tragedy of her children born into those kind of families and stuck, a creation of the welfare state, dependent on the welfare state, unable to ever make anything of their own lives. And of course, in the name of the welfare state, we have public education, government schools, in which we send these poor kids. And the worst public schools, the worst government schools, are in the poorest neighborhoods. So even if you're a young, ambitious, bright, excited about learning young child, it'll be drilled out of you by the government teacher, by the government bureaucrat writing the curriculum, by the government bureaucrat convinced that you are hopeless because you live in a hopeless neighborhood and has decided what your fate should be in advance. I mean, the welfare state is evil through and through from every aspect and every direction. What it does to the wealthy, what it does to the successful, and what it does to the poor, what it does to ambitious young people. And then they become entitled and alienated, and then we say Marx was right. See, Marx was right. No, this is all the creation of the welfare state. Evil through and through. Now this brings me, and I think this will be the final little thing I want to say tonight. I've got other topics, but I'll have to push them off to next time. We've already gone an hour. To Kanye West. Now, I don't like Kanye, the little I know of him. I must admit, I know nothing about hip hop, and I know nothing about rap, and I know nothing about that world and music. The little I've seen of Kanye, he seems like an emotionalist. He seems a little nuts. He seems ignorant. But what's interesting about what Kanye said this week is that in a sense, he was willing to challenge the status quo. He was willing to say, wait a minute, is the system so good for us being Black Americans, poor Black Americans? He said, you know, basically my interpretation of what he said is, you know, I don't know what the answers are. And unfortunately, he's hooked up his wagon to Donald Trump, not exactly an advocate of capitalism. But I don't know. He said, but it's about the individual. We shouldn't be treating people as groups. And maybe the welfare state, he didn't quite say it this way. This is me saying it. Maybe the welfare state hasn't helped my people as much as they think it has. Maybe the people who grew up in my neighborhoods were not as helped by these policies as many of them think they were. Now, I'm not gonna laud Kanye West because I don't like him and I don't think he's trustworthy. And I think tomorrow he could say something so bad that I would not want to be on the same stage with him. But he's, maybe there are people out there, in the Black community waking up to the fact that the welfare state has crippled them. The welfare state has been bad for them, that the welfare state has, basically institutionalized them into poverty, that the welfare state has destroyed their lives. Maybe this is a sign there is some awakening. Even a little awakening would be a great thing. Even a little awakening would move us in the right direction. So, and what I found interesting was, wow, the onslaught by people against Kanye, right? Wow. I mean, partially justifiable because he basically complimented Trump and hitched his wagon to Trump's, as if Trump is the solution to anything. But you guys know my opinion of Trump. But a lot of it was, you're betraying your race. You're betraying poor people. You're betraying all this stuff, right? So, so maybe it's a hopeful sign. All right, Marx, welfare state, a little bit of Kanye. Hopefully that kept your attention. Let me just say, Raka Ali posted a video, I guess, in response to my comments from my last show, I think, on his music. I feel bad about the whole thing. I haven't watched the video, and I don't know that I will, but I feel bad about the whole thing because I had no intention of saying anything negative about him. I like him. I like him as a person. I like the fact that he's bringing young people, attracting young people into kind of the objectivist movement. I like some of his humor. I like a lot. I like his more serious shows, some of them. I just don't like his music, and I don't like the profanity. And maybe nihilism is the wrong term to use. Maybe it's just the profanity and the darkness. Humor by definition is something that knocks stuff down. So it's very easy to slip from humor into nihilism. And I haven't heard enough of Raka Ali's music to say that is the case. But it's not my style. I don't like it, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't. And I don't like the humor. It's too vulgar for me. For me, like Lenny Bruce was too vulgar. I mean, the fact that everybody gets a kick and I would get dozens more views on this video if I use the F word every 3 sentences is not a good sign. It's not something I think is good about the culture. I don't think profanity is this advancement in society, that using profanity is a wonderful thing. Lenny Bruce, who, you don't know who Lenny Bruce is? Oh my God. Okay, go look him up. Raka, I didn't mean to offend you. You're a good guy. Let's shake on it, right? And leave it at that. And I'm old. What can I say? And my sense of humor, I haven't seen a comedy made in the United States in the last 30 years probably that I've liked. Ever since that movie called Dumb and Dumber came out, all comedy is dumb and dumber and dumber and dumber and even dumber and the lowest dumbness you can imagine. That's American comedy. I've seen a lot of good British comedy, but American comedy is horrible. I don't like any of them. What was it? 40-Year-Old Virgin was horrible and stupid and just stupid. All those comedies. I loved the Marx Brothers. I loved the old movies of the 1930s and 1940s. My favorite movies, comedies are. Oh my God. You're saying I'm not getting old. I'm getting old. I can't remember my favorite, one of my favorite directors of all time. Somebody help me out. Comedy director of the 30s and 40s wrote Ninotchka, directed Ninotchka, right? Ninotchka, right? Somebody on the chats, Ninotchka. I'm going nuts. No, not Billy Wilder. Billy Wilder was great. Ernst Lubitsch, the greatest comedy director of all time. The greatest comedy director of all time, Ernst Lubitsch. Look up his movies. Unbelievable. That is comedy. Billy Wilder, that is comedy. What's the one with Billy Wilder with Jack Lemmon and Marilyn Monroe, where they're going to the South? Anybody remember that? Nobody's helping me out today. You guys are way too. Some Like It Hot. Thank you, Thomas. I mean, that's comedy. Some Like It Hot. That is so funny, so ahead of its time, so sexy, so. Wow. I mean, Some Like It Hot. I mean, those are the great. I like Bob Hope. When I was a kid, I liked Jerry Lewis. I can't say I like him as much today, but I like Jerry Lewis. I even like Jim Carrey in his Liar or something. I thought was a clever movie. He reminds me of Jerry Lewis. I mean, Jim Carrey is the modern Jerry Lewis. Nowhere near, I think, ultimately as good. Anyway, there's so many. Frank Capra was a commie. I mean, not a all-out commie, but he was basically a socialist, and he was terrible. But yes, Billy Wilder wrote, I think, directed Some Like It Hot. I mean, even Mel Brooks is really can be really funny, even though he is on the verge of nihilism. Because what Mel Brooks specializes in, is taking a movie genre, right? A good movie genre, like the Western or like the Frankenstein movie, right? And then ripping it to shreds and making fun of everything good about it. And there's some things there that I like, and so many of those things that I hate, right? That I really despise. So because he makes fun of heroes, like Blasting Saddles, I really don't like that movie. I mean, my favorite Mel Brooks movies. Here's two movies for you. I think that's the two of the funniest movies ever made, right? The Producers, which you probably have all seen. The Producers, because it's being remade, and it was a play, and it was a very successful play. But if you haven't seen The Producers, I still, every time I see it, I'm rolling around the floor laughing. I think it's hysterical. But a movie that people don't know and are not familiar with is Mel Brooks' first movie, I think before he made The Producers, which is called 12 Chairs. Look up 12 Chairs. I think it's an hysterical movie. I like Lucille Ball. I mean, people are putting up a variety of different movies, but I didn't like Spaceballs. Again, he just makes fun of genres that are good, and he makes fun purposefully of heroism. I like his first two movies, The Producers and 12 Chairs, because I don't think he makes quite as much fun of virtue. 12 Chairs was 2 years after The Producers, so somebody's corrected me there. So I'm just doing this all off of memory. So I mean, those are my comedies. That's my humor. And, they don't have profanities in them. You don't have to say the F word in order to get a laugh. You get a laugh by actually saying something funny. Right? Monty Python. I love some of Monty Python. Some of Monty Python is just too screwy for me, just too. But yeah, Yes Minister, brilliant. Black Adder, beyond brilliant. Coupling, many of you know I love Coupling. Some people, I know some objectives who hate it, but I love Coupling. Brilliant humor. I just rewatched all the seasons of Coupling. My wife and I just did a kind of a what do you call it when you watch them all in sequence? Whatever. We watched all of Coupling's 4 seasons in a row, kind of over a few weeks, and we had a blast. It was so much fun. It's such a good comedy. So British comedies, I love a lot of British comedies. I love some British movies comedy. I even love Charlie Chaplin, and I know Ayn Rand hated Charlie Chaplin, and he certainly was a lefty. But I like Charlie Chaplin. I think he mixed in sentimentality with humor, and he was very funny and very poignant. So I have a lot of respect for Charlie Chaplin. Yeah, I mean, I love a lot of funny stuff, but that, I'm dating myself, right? So, Frank, thank you. Faulty Towers, one of the greatest. One of the greatest. Yeah. Don't mention the war. If you don't know that reference, you've got to see the chapter on the Germans in Faulty Towers, one of the funniest half hours ever put together. Don't mention the war. So yes, Faulty Towers. So, we could go on and on. So there's a lot of good, funny stuff. But most of the stuff that I see today, I don't think is that funny. I just don't get it. And it's, again, I think it's too easy to be dark or vulgar. But again, I do not want to get into a argument with Rucka because, what the hell? And he's more successful than I am on YouTube. So who am I to talk, right? He's got many, many more followers, and you guys watch his serious videos more than you watch my serious videos. So he's bigger even on the non-humor side than I am. So I should be grateful. He sometimes listens to my podcast and responds to them. All right. I think we're done. We ended a comedy. If I say anything else, I'll probably ruin it. I will say one thing. I'm not funny typically, but once in a while I do a public talk, and I'm funny, and people laugh, and once in a while it just something clicks. And I did a talk like that in Brazil, and I need to write to them and find out if the video is available, because I was on that night. And the audience was really laughing. It was like almost I was doing stand-up, and it was really cool. And I can't do that on purpose, right? I can't do it on purpose. But once in a while, everything's clicking, and I'm making these funny comments, and people laugh. And so I cannot be humorous on purpose. I think I'd bomb completely. But I can be funny like by accident, I guess. And if I get it, if the audience is responding that way, I can sometimes build on that. They were not laughing at me. What is this nastiness? What do you have to do that for? Right? They were laughing at my jokes. They were laughing at what I was saying. They were not, stop it, right? Be nice. I'm best when I take no prisoners. I guess that's true. I'm best when I rant and I take no prisoners. Today was Karl Marx's turn, and the welfare state. I'm always happy to rip up the welfare state. All right, guys. Talk to you soon. Soonest will be Friday. We'll do another live show on Friday, 8 or 9 p.m. East Coast time. Stay tuned. Then if Amy's back, we'll do a Yaron and Amy show on Saturday, and I'll probably do something on Sunday. And then I'm off for like 2 weeks to Israel but I'll try to do some stuff from overseas. We'll see how that works. But thank you guys, and have a good night. And I forgot. Don't forget to share. Those of you on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Please subscribe. We're getting very, very close to 10,000. Very, very close. We're like 9,400. This is very cool. There's a good chance we make 10,000 this month. Help us make 10,000 this month by subscribing to the YouTube channel. And of course, don't forget to go to Patreon and support the show, support my activities, the Yaron Brook show activities, all the stuff we do, like that. Wasn't that show that I did with Dave Rubin a blast? And we've got some big plans, guys. You're going to be really happy with the scheming that Dave Rubin and I are doing. We've got some big plans. But to make those plans happen, we need your help. So go make a contribution. If you want the contribution to go to a debate between me and Ben Shapiro, we need about $20,000 to $30,000 to make that happen. A debate between me and Ben. We need about $45,000 to make the debate happen. That's Dave's cut, my cut, and mostly Ben Shapiro's cut. So anything you can help get us to the 45,000 would be great. So we're way short of that so far. That is a lot of money. It's a lot of money. Ben Shapiro is super expensive, but you've been clamoring for it. Put your money where your mouth is. That's how it works. All right. Thanks, everybody. And I will talk to you on Friday. Cool. Bye.